Can we talk about generics? I want to give you 3 use cases. The first one is the obvious collections. Then there's the classic class string example. And then finally, a query builder that supports generic types. The thing about generics and type systems as a whole is that they make you as a developer just so much more productive, but also makes your code run more smoothly. And what I mean with that is that thanks to inline autocompletion and static analysis, we get so much benefit from systems that can read our code without executing it and figuring out a lot of things that might be wrong. Before you've ever written a test, before you've ever run the code, it knows that something is wrong here because it's looking at the type system. And static analysis comes in 2 flavors. There's the inline autocompletion real-time analysis like you have with PHP Storm, where as you're typing, the analyzer can give you input about what you're dealing with here. And this is a huge productivity boost. Then there's the more classic static analysis tools like PHP Stan or Mago that will analyze your whole code base and give you a report of what's wrong. You typically run this in CI or locally after having done some work. It takes a bit more time to scan everything, but then you get a report of everything that might break because of type system violations and you fix it. And so this is the thing with type systems. They are such a great tool to help the developer while they are writing code. The problem with PHP is that it has a runtime checked type system, which doesn't really make much sense if you're using static analysis tools. But when PHP's type system was introduced, there were no static analysis tools. So yeah, the only place to actually check for types is during runtime, which is such a weird thing to do because you can actually check correctness based on the type system without ever running a single line of code. You can think of generics as an extension on the base type system to make it even more powerful, more flexible, but that comes with a performance cost. Can you imagine the performance gains if PHP wouldn't have to check every single type of input every time a function is called during runtime? And checking generic types at runtime in PHP, it's just not viable. And developers using generics today via doc blocks, they know this, they're fine with it. They write their doc block annotations, they use their static analyzers to check for correctness, and then they are done. They don't have to do any type checks at runtime. And so PHP is a bit weird. The only reason you would need generic type information during runtime is for metaprogramming via reflection, where you can, for example, read that generic type information and do things with it on the framework level. A good example is an ORM with has many relations. But apart from that metaprogram, there is really no need for runtime type checks. And so when we're talking about generics in PHP, well, yeah, it becomes a bit difficult, right? Because we already have a runtime type checker, which does basic type checking. The community now wants a more powerful type system because it has proven to be very valuable. And yeah, now should we just shove that into the runtime type checker, which is already having an impact on performance? Generics would have a serious impact, by the way, on performance. If we check them at runtime, people looked into it. It's not free. It's not difficult to imagine, right? You're doing more things during runtime that actually aren't really needed. And so PHP is facing 3 problems when it comes to generics these days. The first thing is that there's no real syntax, although I would say that's the most minor issue. I would like better syntax. I don't really like doc blocks, the same reason I liked having attributes in the language instead of doc block annotations. But okay, it's the most minor issue. The second challenge is the reflection API. On the framework level, if we want to access generic type information from a doc block, we actually have to parse that string at runtime. That's crazy, but it is the only thing we can do at this point. And the third problem is that there's no real unified specification. There's PHP Storm, PHP Stan, Mago, Psalm, Fan, all static analysis vendors, and they are all kind of doing their thing. Over the years, they have agreed on like the basic syntax, but there are so many outliers. It is truly a mess. And the only thing that could really make a change here is if PHP would say, this is the way forward. And you just have to follow along. So yeah, generics, they are not a runtime tool, and a type system in general is not a runtime tool. It is the decision that PHP made years ago when they introduced its type system. Maybe that was wrong, but it's easy to say that in hindsight. The question is, do we really want to continue down that path? Or do we want PHP to evolve? And sometimes that takes making tough decisions. The good thing is PHP has done very well in the past when these tough decisions were made, when these big conceptual changes were introduced. I'm thinking about the very old rewrite from PHP. I think it was PHP 4 with Zend, and then PHP 7 that got like completely overhauled. Then there also was the early PHP 8 era. Nikita was moving the language forwards tremendously, introducing a lot of features that we use day by day today. I would say PHP needs a mind shift more than anything else. And especially when it comes to generics, I think the community has proven that it works. Static analysis tools only see growth. And in this day and age for modern software development, I think there is little room for debate. The question just is if PHP wants to catch up or stay behind.